If I can ask everybody to please put your speakers on mute, unless you're speaking, just so that we don't have any external interference. So thank you very much for all of you for making the time to attend this morning. We really do appreciate it, given that it's a early Friday morning. I'd like to start by just sharing with you a little bit about the webinar. This is a webinar series, and this is the first of the series. We kick off today with the introduction, which is addressing who is the NSMSA, what do we do, how do we do it, and how do we partner with other organizations. So because this is a series, the second one will be next month, which will be the month of May, and we'll keep you posted on the dates. And the second one will probably address the issue of understanding the dynamics of gender-based violence. The third one will address empowering communities to combat gender-based violence. So those are two that will follow, and we'll keep you posted about the rest. I'd also please like to ask people to register with your names, your first name, your surname, as well as your organization and your email on the chat, so that we have a record of, all the attendees. And so now I'd like to very warmly welcome you again on this beautiful Friday morning. Welcome to all the board members of the NSMSA, all the participants, the representatives, and all other attendees. I think we're quite blessed. I saw that the last time we have 30 participants. We're really very pleased about that. Thank you to all of you for making this time from your important schedules. What I'd like to just indicate is that the procedure we will follow for this webinar will start by me introducing the presenters, who are Diane Masawi, our dynamic chairperson of the NSM, and Rose Bailey, our accomplished social worker. I'll go through their bios first, just so that you know who's actually presenting and you can become a little bit more familiar with the people from the NSM. My name is Vera Dango. I think a lot of you do know who I am, but in case you don't, I'm the head of the executive of the National Shelter Movement of South Africa. So I'm going to go now to introduce Diane. Diane Masawi has over the past 15 years of working experience within civil society in South Africa and over 5 years in the region. She's currently the chair of the board of the National Shelter Movement of South Africa, and her work experience focuses on issues with criminalized and marginalized communities such as sex work, transgender, PWID, gender-based violence, violence against women, human rights, HIV prevention, and access to healthcare. She has a long-standing track record in working with women and the key and priority populations in all their diversity, where communities are criminalized or marginalized or are very traditional, and which impact services that are offered and access to these services. Her work involves engaging with a wide range of stakeholders from the affected communities to service providers, government departments, the media, communities, civil society, organizations, and donors. Over the last couple of years, her experiences have been in ensuring that all people she worked with are aware of their rights and are able to try and access the available resources. Diane is especially passionate about sexual and reproductive health and actively seeks out work that supports the end of criminalization, marginalization, and access to quality healthcare services for people in their diversity. Her work is fundamentally based on the recognition of multiple and intersectional identities that people have and how these impact on their realities, risks, needs, and how to mitigate these. She's currently doing her master's in sexual and reproductive rights. A very warm welcome to Diane, and thank you so much for agreeing to do this presentation. We really, at the NSM, appreciate that. I'll now introduce Rose Bailey, our very accomplished social worker. Rose is a social worker at the Etembeni Community Center in Daar, which is in the Northern Cape. And she's also the manager of the Etembeni Shelter and the Victoria West Shelter. Rose Bailey trained as a social worker. She obtained a degree at the University of South Africa. After 3 years of practicing generic social work, she started managing the Probation Services Division at the Department of Social Development at Pixley, Kaseme District. Under her guidance, Pixley Kaseme District was declared the best performing district in terms of probation services in 2011 by the Department of Justice. Well done, Rose. In 2013, Rose moved to the private sector where she started specializing in victim empowerment services. The center where she works is very widely recognized in South Africa for their services to victims of rape, domestic violence, gender-based violence, witnesses to crime, and to survivors of gender-based violence. Her services include trauma debriefing, trauma counseling, therapeutic counseling, and emotional well-being. Currently, Rose serves as a representative, provincial representative of the Northern Cape on the National Shelter Movement, where she's instrumental in influencing policy development and media perceptions. Her motto to approach life is with a positive outlook, and she says, "This too shall pass," when she's faced with any challenges. So I thank you very much, Rose, for also taking the time off from your busy schedule to offer us this time and your presentation. So without any ado, we'll start by requesting Diane to offer us her presentation.
Good morning, Zubaida, and good morning to everybody. I think firstly, if I can start just by apologizing that I will not be turning my camera on. We haven't had power since yesterday, and I am on tethering device. And I don't want to compromise the quality by turning on my camera. But I will briefly turn it on just so that everybody can see who is speaking. For those who don't know me, so I'm Diane Zubaida. Thank you very much. So I will proceed with my presentation. So like Zubaida said, this is the first in a series, and the aim of today's webinar is to just talk about the National Shelter Movement of South Africa, who we are, what we do, and how we partner with other organizations. But I think before, getting into that, we need to ask ourselves, why are we here? Not only in terms of this presentation of today, but also, why is the National Shelter Movement of South Africa here? Why are we here as organizations, as activists, who work to combat gender-based violence? And I think the simple answer is because, something has really gone wrong. That's why we're here. No one really wants shelters. As the chairperson, whenever people ask me about the shelter movement, I speak about it with pride, but I also speak about it with a lot of hurt, because shelters are here because something has really gone wrong. In 2023, South Africa was ranked in terms of the crime index amongst African countries as the highest, with an index of 75.5. Somalia, which is a country that has constant turmoil, came second. And, so for me, I think we need to acknowledge that, we live in a very violent country. And people might not say, some people might say, no, it's not that violent, but depending on where you are situated, where, your context, we do live in a very violent society. When one looks at the female homicide rates in South Africa, it's 24.6, which is 6 times, higher than the global average. So it means, women in this country, and when we speak about women, we speak of women in their diversity, are constantly being abused, harassed, being killed. The other thing we need to also realize is, a lot of these numbers are numbers of reported numbers. We know that, a lot of people don't report. I mean, we have, people speak about 1 in 9. In my opinion, that number is much higher. Roughly 28% of men in South Africa, and this is through some studies, have admitted to raping at least one woman. 46 have admitted to being repeat offenders, and a further 7.7 admitted to raping 10 or more women or girls. I mean, these numbers are scary, and this is men who openly admitted. We know that there are many who don't. I mean, I have a friend who always speaks about, patriarchy and how, there are a lot of men who do a lot of things that, but the only difference is that they don't get caught. When we speak about gender-based violence, sometimes, we assume it's, when somebody, physically beats, but we know when we look at the definition, it starts small and it builds up. And, how many men actually acknowledge and say, this is who I am, this is what I've done, in terms of that. South Africa is a patriarchal culture, and the historical precedence of inequality has exacerbated the inequalities that exist between men and women in society. And I think this is not to say it's an excuse, but it's one of those things that we need to acknowledge. And when we do programming, when we discuss, when we have conversations, to always have it at the back of our minds. When viewed historically, it's clear that the effects of gender-based violence influence all members of society, not just women. The impact of violence has a far-reaching effect. And when one looks at it from, the impact when it comes to children, the impact when it comes to the family, the impact when it comes to the community, the impact even when it comes to the workplace and our ability to be productive economically, because when you have half the society fearing for their lives, when we have women not going to work, when we need to then look for resources, for funding to support survivors of violence, that has an impact. So everybody in our society, whether you actively know somebody who has experienced gender-based violence or you don't, we are affected. I think the other thing to also remember is when it comes to gender-based violence, especially in intimate partner settings, is a lot of survivors carry a lot of guilt, and people don't want to share and say, this is my situation. So all of us are affected and impacted. Mitigating gender-based violence requires treating it as a societal problem rather than treating it as a women's issue. We need to engage men, we need to empower women, but we also need to ensure that we've got services. And when we talk about services, it's not just that people can report, but services to actually, one, address the issues, but also to ensure that people are then supported along that journey. And one of those services is sheltering services. So for me, I think as we, have this discussion today, but also, throughout the webinar series, I think some food for thought is, because I think these are some of those questions that, either people, sometimes struggle to get, to get through their minds, or, people, it's those, icky questions that people sometimes think about but don't address, and people just don't know how to deal with it. Is, who would want to leave their house, their friends, and their communities? What is your state of mind when you leave your home? Who do you take with when you leave? And why do you take, that person? What do you take and why do you take that? But I think also, we then need to look, especially in the line of these webinars, is, who funds for shelters and what are they exactly funding for? One of the things, that the National Shelter Movement is, we are a resource. And I quickly just took this one, which is a domestic violence safety plan, and this was developed during COVID. If you haven't, engaged with it, please, after the webinar, please go to our website, have a look at it, so you can see some of the resources and the materials that we're producing. So when it comes to sheltering services, and these are just some direct quotes I pulled, is, shelters play a fundamental mitigating role in responding to and addressing violence against women and their children. Shelters offer safe accommodation. They provide opportunities for healing and to rebuild, and play a significant role in interrupting and breaking the cycle of violence. I think it would be very careless of me, to share this quote and not raise some of the issues we are seeing in the media right now around funding, and how this is impacting, especially services that are addressing and that are dealing with some of these issues. I think I saw the director of Paul was on the news the other day, and she was talking about the ripple effect and the impact of the funding crisis that we're currently seeing, not only for survivors and their children, but also for communities at large. So shelters provide a critical service to those undergoing high levels of trauma. They provide a space to stay, psychosocial support, access to medical and paralegal services, skills development initiatives, and services to children. Shelter services to victims of domestic violence thus play a critical role in the care economy. Unfortunately, most of the services provided by the care economy are undervalued and under-resourced. And I think this is one of the things that, we always need to keep at the back of our minds, is that, we're here because something has gone wrong, but we also then need to respond adequately. And for shelters to be able to respond, we need resources, we need funding. So in terms of who is the National Shelter Movement, the National Shelter Movement of South Africa is a non-profit, non-governmental organization servicing as an umbrella body for 96 gender-based violence shelters across South Africa. I think it's important for us to and for me to stress that, there are other types of shelters in the country. There's homeless shelters, there's shelters for men, but, we are specifically looking at shelters that address gender-based violence. Our head office is in Johannesburg. We have 3-member executive, Dr. Dangle, who is chairing this session. We also have Advocate Bernadine, and then we have NSMSA, who is the national coordinator. The movement also has 6 administrative staff members. We have 9 provincial representatives, and then there is the 98 shelters that are current members of the National Shelter Movement. The National Shelter Movement was established in 2008. So we are in the in the teen phase. We've worked through some of the teething problems, and now it's around how do we then move to that next level. The National Shelter Movement operates with provincial representatives who are elected to advocate and address the pressing issues surrounding gender-based violence and shelters. In terms of our vision and our mission, our vision is a society where women and children are free and safe from gender-based violence. And when one looks at this mission, it looks like, we're trying to work ourselves out of a job, but the reality is, although we do provide these services, it comes at a great pain, because we know what it has taken for women and children to land up in shelters. In terms of our mission, it is a united voice on sheltering of women survivors and gender-based violence and their children in South Africa. And we do this through direct service provision, engaging in lobbying and advocacy at provincial and at national level. And the reason this is because we know that there are different policies when it comes to provincial and national. And we, although we do try and see how we can standardize so that, it's, equal services, we know and we acknowledge some of these changes. And that's why we then operate at those different levels. We work in terms of policy and legislative change. And then we do a lot of networking with local, provincial, national, and international stakeholders. And then there is a lot of capacity building when it comes to gender-based violence. And some of this, is not only when it comes to shelters, but also, in terms of partners, civil society organizations, but then also when it comes to policymakers. And then we also do a lot of research. And one of the webinars, I think series 4 or 5, we'll look at some of the research that the National Shelter Movement has facilitated. I think I'm handing over now to Rose.
Good morning, everybody. I just want to know if everybody can hear me.
Yes, we can.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Thank you so much. So I'm Rose Bailey from the a community, the R in the Northern Cape, and I work for an organization called Etimbeni Community Center. So I will take over from Diane and continue with our presentation, where I will start with the goals of the National Shelter Movement. Our first goal is we concentrate very heavily on advocacy and lobbying. So the NSMA advocates for legislative reforms and policy changes that safeguard the rights and interests of gender-based violence survivors. It lobbies tirelessly for increased funding, improved resources, and heightened awareness surrounding GBV issues. I remember a few of us a few years back was standing in the rain in front of Parliament, getting attention in terms of the lack of funding for shelters. And I think that paid off very well, not so much monetarily wise, but the president at least acknowledged that he saw us in front of the Parliament. Our second goal is to establish provincial shelter networks, recognizing the power of collaboration. The NSMA fosters provincial shelter network forums to facilitate knowledge sharing, resource pooling, and coordinated responses to the GBV crisis at our grassroots levels. Currently, the National Shelter Movement can boast that we have formed shelter networks in the Free State, Mpumalanga, Western Cape, and also KwaZulu-Natal. Our third goal is to ensure gender sensitivity, and central to its ethos is the commitment to ensuring gender sensitivity in all aspects of service delivery within shelters. The National Shelter Movement champions programs and initiatives that empower survivors, foster resilience, and promote healing from trauma. We have also managed in this regard to develop a manual that is called Let Your Power Glow, that is used in all shelters across South Africa. Diane, can you move to the next one? Thank you. To continue with our goals, it's very important for the National Shelter Movement when it comes to capacity development. The National Shelter Movement invests in the continuous professional development of shelter staff, our service providers, and GBV workers through training, mentorship, and capacity building initiatives. It strives to enhance the effectiveness and efficiency of shelter operations nationwide. So some of our initiatives that was done in terms of capacity building, we can talk about the media communication training. Like for some of us, we had no idea how to communicate with the media, and we had numerous trainings on media communication training. And I can say some of us are experts now in terms of communicating with the media. We have other initiatives like your report writing workshops, and also a very important one that was done through the National Shelter Movement was the training for house mothers. I think we had 2 trainings up to now for house mothers. Our fifth goal is to engage in legislation, and then recognizing the pivotal role of legislation in combating GBV. The National Shelter Movement actively engages with policymakers, lawmakers, and stakeholders to shape gender-responsive laws and policies that prioritize the safety and dignity of gender-based violence. I think the National Shelter Movement got it right to actively got people or shelters or people in this field involved in scrutinizing, acts that is supposed to be amended. We will workshop thoroughly in terms of the VSS bill as well as Domestic Violence Amendment Act. So now we can also say that in terms of legislation, we do have a say, and we do have an informed and collaborative say. Our sixth goal is offer space, mutual support, shared experiences, and common challenges. The National Shelter Movement facilitates a supportive environment where shelter staff and survivors can find solidarity, exchange insights, and address common obstacles, fostering resilience again and camaraderie within the sheltering community. And I think one of the goals with this continuous webinars from today on is exactly to reach that goal. Our seventh goal is to conduct research. It's very important when you speak to your funders, especially, and want to change minds, like Diane describe some of the stats that we have in South Africa. So it's very important to tell people that I come from a premises where I know exactly what the stats in South Africa is. I know exactly what a budget should look like, you know, to run a certain service, a comprehensive service. So the National Shelter Movement conducts rigorous research to deepen understanding of gender-based violence and femicide dynamics, inform policy decisions, and advance evidence-based solutions, driving systematic change and empowering stakeholders to better address the complexities of gender-based violence. So in this regard, we have done numerous research. So the research papers out there. You can access it via our website. Two that I want to mention is the one that was done in terms of raising women's voices within our shelters, where we got an exact idea what it is that a lady that is accommodated in our shelters, what is it that they need, a comprehensive service. The other one that was done is the true cost of gender-based violence. And this one we very much hope that government will adopt to see that the disparities within the way shelters are being funded within the country and across different provinces it's just ridiculous. So that is one of the fights that we are still fighting and hope to win with the help of all of you and we as a collective. Diane? Okay, so just to showcase that we are serious about our goals and that we work towards achieving our goals, I think the National Shelter Movement really is focused on their goals and what it wants to achieve and has already achieved a lot of these goals. So in terms of our research, we have partnered with the likes of Heinrich Bull Foundation and your researchers such as Lisa Vetten. And these are both two entities or people that are not ashamed or scared to say what their findings is on whatever platform you put them. The National Shelter Movement has undertaken groundbreaking research projects, and like I mentioned, the true cost of gender-based violence in South Africa. So I think we can tick that one off as a win for the National Shelter Movement when it comes to our goals. In terms of resource development, I've already mentioned that we have developed a resource for the shelter, letting our Power Glow manual that is designed to empower the survivors with practical tools and psychological support. These resources are deployed across shelters to foster empowerment and resilience among survivors. In terms of our capacity building, I already spoke to that, but just to showcase you that we have achieved that goal. Through targeted capacity building sessions and mentorship programs, the National Shelter Movement invests in the professional growth and development of shelter staff and service providers. When it comes to the mentorship program, this is a very valuable program that a lot of shelters can attest to as benefit them a lot. Because to open up a shelter is just to open up a shelter, but to render a professional and efficient services, you need the likes of your NSMSA to mentor your small and upcoming shelters, and they have done a very good job. So they've done it. Okay, it's fine. You can go on. It's fine. Okay, so when it comes to advocacy and awareness, the National Shelter Movement is at the forefront of advocacy efforts. Like I said, I remember in 2018, there was a letter drafted directly to the president with regards to the funding of shelters. We are not ashamed to organize protests, writing open letters to policymakers, and participating in high-profile events such as world conferences on sheltering. And I can say that the ladies that represent us on this world conferences has really put the national shelter movement on the map when it comes to global awareness. These endeavors aim to raise awareness, mobilize support, and drive meaningful change in the fight against gender-based violence. Then the national shelter movement played a critical role during the COVID period for most of our shelters. It was just chaos, but they brought some sort of calm in our lives. So thank you very much for the initiatives. So we call it the emergency response, and during the unprecedented challenges posed by the COVID-19 pandemic, the national shelter movement very swiftly mobilized resources and support for shelters facing closure and operational disruptions. Through fundraising efforts and strategic partnerships, it provided critical funding for personal protective equipment and operational costs, ensuring that shelters remained operational and accessible to those in need. I'm sure most of the shelters will never forget the help that we received through the national shelter movement during those very frightening period. So through the national shelter movement, we have established a helpline, and in recognition of the urgent need for accessible support services, the national shelter movement established a 24-hour helpline for women and children affected by gender-based violence. This lifeline provides immediate assistance, facilitate shelter placements, and offer vital support in navigating legal and protective avenues. And we would like to invite all of you that is present today or do part of this webinar to please go out and you can see the National Shelter Helpline down there. Please share that with your communities, because there are people out there who really need the help. Thank you. Okay, so impact and future direction. The national shelter movement tireless efforts to have yielded tangible results, fostering great awareness, resilience, and support for gender-based violence survivors across South Africa. However, we all know the journey towards a society free from violence is far from over, and we all know that the wheel of change are slowly turning. The national shelter movement remains steadfast, however, in its commitment to amplify survivor voices, driving policy reforms, and building a future where shelters serve as beacons of hope and healing for all those affected by gender-based violence. As it continues to evolve and adapt to the changing landscape of gender-based violence, the national shelter movement remains guided by its core principles of solidarity, empowerment, and advocacy. Through collaborative partnerships, innovative solutions, and unwavering dedication, it seeks to pave the way towards a brighter, safer future for women and children across South Africa. So in conclusion, I can just say that the national shelter movement are now very highly respected and acknowledged on a national and even an international platform. It means that we do have a say. And that is also very evident when it comes to when you look at the partnership that we currently have with DSD, that is willing to partner with us for our yearly national conferences or seminars So in terms of this webinar, we would like to invite everybody to partner with the National Shelter Movement, because 1,000 women voices will not be ignored. And we are striving for much more than 1,000 voices. So just to tell you, one of our research projects, they concluded that judging from the case files and interviews with shelter staff, it is obvious that shelter staff members are committing to providing the best service they can within their budgetary and capacity allowance. So To demonstrate that, I would like to invite Women to Women. It's a shelter in Kimberley, to tell you something about themselves. For the mere fact that this shelter has been in operation for a long time and have never received a cent from DSD, but they, however, managed to save the lives of a lot of women. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Rose. We look forward to Women to Women doing their presentation.
Good morning, everyone. I just want to check if everyone can hear me.
Good morning. Yes, we can.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for the opportunity. My name is NSMSA. I'm from Women to Women, and I would just like to share more about our organization with you. So I'll start with the background of the organization. Our wonderful groundbreaking organization, Women to Women, was founded in 2011 by Priscilla Smith. We have existed more than a decade. Through our great skills and work ethic, we can profoundly say that we have achieved great milestones. Our founder, Priscilla Smith, is a survivor of violence against women and femicide, and had to flee Cape Town, had to flee by train with a young daughter, 955 kilometers from her birthplace, to escape a then abusive husband from whom she divorced years ago. She fled to her brother who was living in Kimberley at the time. And with the hairdressing and hairstyling skills, she was quickly able to generate an income to keep her and her child afloat. Allow me to say that I am that young daughter. I was about 8 or 9 years old at the time. I'm now 33 years old, and I work for Women to Women. I work at the shelter for women and children. So it was during this time of pain and overcoming the abuse and post-traumatic stress of violence against her that the idea of creating a support organization for abused women and children and their children like her, that the idea of a place called home program was born. She realized that not all women who go through this evil of gender-based violence have the benefit of a supportive family during difficult times. She experienced that even though she had the support of her family, pain is a very complex experience and difficult to conceptualize. Priscilla Smith realized that millions of women are suffering this gender-based violence crisis, and many times those who help them lack the deep understanding of traumatic pain related to what the victim really goes through. Having a place of safety is not enough if the victim does not find a place of healing and a place that they can call home while they are going through a restorative process. So when we came to Kimberley, we were lucky enough to have the support of my mom's brother to be able to offer us accommodation and opportunity to start rebuilding our lives. I remember Priscilla, my mom, mentioning that during her going through programs with NSM, she realized that there had been shelters in Cape Town all along, but when she was going through what she was going through, she didn't know that there was a shelter in Cape Town that she could go to, because had she known that, she wouldn't have traveled so far, she wouldn't have left everything behind and come all the way to Kimberley to do that. She would have just gone to a shelter in Cape Town. She wasn't familiar with the shelter there at the time, and so the decision, because she wasn't safe, she had decided to come to Kimberley. So the services that we offer, we've got a housing program for gender-based violence victims. We do in-house counseling for singles, moms, and children. We have a community feeding program. We do gender-based violence awareness campaigns, counseling and support to families of people suffering from substance abuse, and then we also do court support for victims of gender-based violence and femicide. I'd like to share 2 of our success stories. One being Fiona Peterson, who came to a place called Home in January 2022. She was homeless and on substance abuse, and through our counseling services and programs, she's now working as a volunteer house mother for the organization. Chantal Demenay came to a place called Home in June 2022. She's currently on parole and she was homeless. Her family lives in Bloemfontein, and the only way that she could come out was if she could get alternative accommodation. That's in Kimberley, because she had served a sentence in Kimberley. And so we'd granted her the opportunity to come and stay with us. And also, again, through our counseling services and programs, she is now also a volunteer house mother for the organization. So more on a place called Home, we have a unique housing system for women as part of their recovery journey. It's a 3-stage house system. We've got a primary house, and then we've got secondary flats, and we've got self-sustainable flats. So the organization's biggest funders has been the National Lottery. And through funding that we received from the National Lottery, we were able to buy the premises where the organization is currently situated at. So it used to be a guest house, and we have transferred it into a shelter. So we've got a primary house where women come straight into, and they come into the primary house first, depending on their stay. And that's also the one thing that differentiates woman to woman from the government shelters, is that with government shelters, there's usually a short period of time where women are allowed to stay, whereas with woman to woman, it's usually need-based. So depending on the need of the woman, they would come into the primary house, then they could move. After that, they move into the secondary flats, and then we help women we empower women, help them to try and get employment, and then we move them into the self-sustainable flats where they pay a minimal contribution depending on their income, and it gives them an opportunity to build up their lives, build up resources, get everything that they need, so that when they move out of the shelter, they are able to stand on their own feet and be independent. And they've also acquired some of the things that they need while they are living with us. And then we've got a community soup kitchen that we run weekly. The organization runs a weekly food feeding kitchen. On an average, feeds 7 to 80 people on Fridays. The food kitchen extends its services during school holidays to 3 times a week, because disadvantaged children in our community suffer during school holidays. We know a lot of children depend on the school feeding scheme. So when schools are closed, then they don't have that. So that's why we extend the feeding services during the school holidays. We do training and workshops. The organization hosts various training and workshop programs to empower clients during their stay with us. In July 2023, we completed a 5-day drug and substance abuse training with Dr. Jacobus Nomdu and his team from Hope Revolution as part of our new project called Drug Free Society, which is a subdivision of our gender-based violence operation. We also have needlework training, baking, and cooking workshops as part of our skills development programs. We welcome all of the communities to training and skills development as it assists in empowering our clients with the knowledge and skills needed to become self-sustainable.
Now, a lot of people answer it.
And then I'd like to highlight one of our recent achievements. We are a recipient of the NSMSA Global Fund Capacity Building. Like Sis Rose had said, the organization has never been funded by DSD, despite the fact that the organization has funding multiple times. So with this capacity building opportunity from NSMSA, we believe and hope that the organization might be able to reach out to bigger funders that is beyond the South African borders, to be able to assist us, to be able to continue giving the service that we are offering. And then we are also, that's why we are here today, we are also affiliated to the National Shelter Movement of South Africa. Thank you very much for the opportunity. And yeah, we hope you enjoy the rest of the session. Thank you.
Thank you.
Very impressive presentation, Tremaine Sequoia from Women to Women. I'd like to also thank Diane and Rose Bailey for the very comprehensive presentation that you guys have put together to be able to indicate exactly what the National Shelter Movement is about. So we really do appreciate that. And congratulations again, Jermaine, on, explaining to us how your organization came about and how your mom has managed so well in putting together a service for other survivors of gender-based violence. It truly is, an achievement, and I'm so pleased that you guys are able to share this information with us. These are the kinds of stories that I believe need to be highlighted through the work of the National Shelter Movement as well. And it serves as an inspiration to other women who might be struggling to leave their abusive relationships. So thank you very much for that. I'd like to now ask people if they have any specific questions or comments to any of the presenters, to either ask that in person or to put it in the chat. And also just to remind you that we flashed the information about the National Shelter Movement's helpline, which is on the screen currently. And we're just going to go to the chat now to have a look.
Mantada Futawani is asking how to partner with NSM.
So perhaps we could address that outside of this meeting. If Mantada, if you can write to us at the NSM, and we will put in our email address for you now. Please contact us or phone us. We'll also add in the phone number, and then we can have a discussion about how we can actually partner with you. We have worked previously with the Toyandu Victim Empowerment program with Fiona. I'm not sure if Fiona is there any longer, but we also, as the National Shelter Movement, visited you guys in Toyandu many years ago when the NSM was in its early years. So we'd be very excited about following up and seeing how we can promote this. Thank you very much for that suggestion. Are there any other comments or questions? Those would also be welcome. And a reminder again to everybody, please can you register by writing in your name, your surname, as well as your email address, so that we have a record of everybody and your organization as well, so that we have a record of everybody, and we can also invite you to future events of the NSM. No. It doesn't look like we have any other questions or comments at this point. No. So on that note, I guess I'm going to take this opportunity to thank everybody that has, made the time to attend. And this presentation will be made available on the NSM website. So if anyone's interested and you want to go back to look at the kind of programs or services that the NSM offers, please feel free then to go to the NSM website, and you will be able to find this recording there in a couple of days' time. So thank you very much, everybody, and we'll keep you informed about the future webinars. As I said, the next one will take place in May, and the title would be addressing understanding the dynamics of gender-based violence and femicide, the myths stereotypes, realities, and challenges faced. And we'll let you know who the presenters are and who would be chairing those sessions. I thank you very much for the time that you've taken out, and have a lovely day further. Thank you so much. Take care. Bye-bye, everybody.
Thank you so much,
Thank you
Zubaida.
so
Thank you,
much.
thank you, thank you very much. Bye bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.